All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to TBRCon. And I want to introduce the panel first. It's on overcoming doubt in the writing process. And then we got some excellent writers here today. My name's Hank Early, and I'll let everybody just introduce themselves. So we'll start with Emily.
Hey, everybody. My name is Emily Carpenter. I'm a writer. I live here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. I write suspense kind of thriller with a little twist of Southern Gothic. So there's always something slightly creepy and possibly ghostly going on in my books. And my latest book is called Reviving the Hawthorne Sisters. So, hey, and welcome.
All right, we'll go on to Travis if you want to go next.
Hey, I'm Travis Riddle. I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a fantasy writer. I've written a bunch of standalone stuff like Balam Spring and The Narrows. And my latest project is the Houndstooth trilogy. So Flesh Eater, Mother Pig, and the final book, Dirt King, comes out in 1 week.
Excellent. All right, we'll go down to the next row to Josh.
Okay, I'm Josh Johnson. I live in Minnesota, so I wish I lived down south or it was slightly warmer. I'm a writer of fantasy. My first book, which is, I should have arranged it like Emily has it and just have it sort of nicely sitting behind me. My first book is The Forever Sea. It came out last year around this time. It is an eco-fantasy from DAW in the United States and from Titan in the UK. And the sequel, which is called The Endless Song, is out this coming fall. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Josh. And we'll go ahead and go to Jim.
Hi, I'm Jay Rushing, or Jim when I'm talking to people. I'm the author of the dark fantasy noir novel Radio. It's got the old gods set in Paris in 1920s with a lot of opium and jazz mixed in. I'm also the host of a podcast called The Indie Pub. I'll have a guest on. We'll sit and drink and talk shop about all things indie publishing. I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest, but I live in Switzerland now.
Nice.
Well, and we'll go Jeff last.
That leaves me. Hi, everybody. Jeff Speight from Fairfield, Connecticut, author of Paladin Unbound, the first in my planned trilogy for the Archives of Evelium, high/dark fantasy. Thanks for having me.
All right, and then I'll just briefly mention, because I forgot to earlier, but I am a writer as well, and I write sort of crime noir with a little bit of a dark horror edge to it, and I've written 3 books in a series, the Earl Marcus series, out from Crooked Lane Books. But we'll go ahead and get started. So we're talking about, or we're thinking about doubts and the writing process. And I know when David approached me about being the moderator for this, I thought this was perfect for me because I've experienced just about every kind of doubt experience and then some. So I wanted to start with just kind of getting you guys to give me your general take on like what doubts you experience. And is there like one sort of overriding doubt that nags you and you just are always having to deal with, or does it vary from project to project? And if you don't mind, Jeff, we'll reverse order and start with you this time. Sure.
Well, for me, having published only one book and everything, I have plenty of doubts. Still full of them. Haven't had enough time to get over any of them yet, I'd say. So, you're constantly wondering, if the prose is good enough, if the characters are engaging and going to resonate with your readers, if your dialogue is natural and everything. And so, the list goes on and on and on. And hopefully, as you get a couple books under your belt, you get a little desensitized to that and you start feeling a little more confident. and all that stuff. But as of right now, plenty of doubts for a debut author like myself.
Okay. Yeah, I would say for me, it didn't help to have multiple books. There's always something new to doubt.
Yeah, so. I have 5 books and still as many doubts, just maybe different doubts, I guess. Yeah.
We need to stop now then.
How about you, Jim?
Yeah, lots of them. I think it kind of depends on what I'm focusing on in the moment, because you can doubt everything. But for me, I think my main area of doubt revolves around reader comprehension. Am I being too cryptic? Am I spoon feeding too much? Are they going to understand? Are they bored with this? And just really trying to figure out whether or not my instincts on that feel right. My readers tend to say they do, so that's good. But you can't trust it, right? You always have to doubt it.
Yeah, I've been there too. I've found and I've read, and I think it's pretty good advice that you should give your reader the benefit of the doubt on that they usually will follow even when you think they're not. Although, yeah, it's still always there, because that's the worst thing, is to find out you've written something and it's like somebody completely missed the point or where you were going with it.
Oh, I always try to err on the side of too confusing rather than spoon feeding. I definitely don't want to be there.
Yeah. All right, Josh, what do you start with?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else has said, I think I have lots of doubts. I think I have doubts that have been pretty persistent for me. Oh, we lost Jeff. Oh, he'll maybe be back. Doubts that have been pretty persistent for me as a writer. Is what I'm writing kind of trash, or is it too simplistic, or whatever it is? And I think a lot about those doubts as being like really productive in some ways, because that's the stuff that like I just sit with, right? That ever since I was a kid writing, I've sort of wondered, like, is this any good, etc. But I think a lot about doubts that are really unproductive that have come just with publishing. And once you start thinking about reception and the stuff about audience, that like trying to sort of hit a target that's moving, and there are a billion targets out there and you've only got one arrow, and this sort of thing. And I think I can really go down the rabbit hole with a lot of those doubts about, what are people going to think about this? Will people get it, etc. And I just think it's impossible. And so I think a lot about, like, what are the doubts that like bring me back to writing, and then what are the doubts that that send me away from writing or stop me up. And so lots and lots of doubts of every kind of flavor, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I think you made a great distinction there, though, between productive doubts and non-productive doubts, because I do think there's some times where you need that doubt, and it does kind of push you forward and make you re-examine things, and that's never a bad thing. But when you're kind of paralyzed by it, I think that's when it's really rough. All right, so we got Jeff back. Jeff.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh no, that's fine. And then so we're to Travis now.
I mean, I gotta agree with everything everyone has said so far, but also one of my biggest doubts is just the very broad of, is anybody going to care about this? Like, all this time and effort and money I'm putting into this, and is anyone even going to read it? Is anyone going to like it? Because especially as an indie author, like, we only have ourselves to like push these things that we write. And so anything from like building an audience to like literally just like making my money back, because it's like, if I put this out after spending all this time, all this money, like getting it edited, getting cover art and everything, and then nobody reads it, then not only does it feel bad just as a creator, but then also like I'm out like a ton of money on it.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think no matter what your level, however you're publishing, traditionally or independently or self-publishing or whatever, the worst feeling in the world is to feel like nobody's paying attention to when your book does get out there. All right, Emily, what do you struggle with?
Yeah, I think I have. I've kind of moved through all the gamut of doubts. I always have that one doubt when I start a new book, like, how do I write a book again? Like, I may have forgotten how to do this. I think maybe I have, and then of course you get going and you're like, well, I kind of have, and I kind of haven't. And, but it really is the strangest experience. I don't know if y'all experienced that, where you really just have this moment where you're like, I've done this before. I should know how to do this. And I feel kind of lost. And then you just, that's a real doubting moment for me. I think the big one now that I have 5 books under my belt, I have a lot of doubt about the whole machinery of the publishing industry. And, I'm always kind of questioning and doubting, am I writing something that is, old hat and boring and people have seen before? Or is this something new and fresh? Or is this, there always seems to be sort of this, you get this word from your agent, nobody's doing that anymore. Or editors don't want to see that. And that's sort of information always completely surprises me, because I'm more in this artistic state of all ideas are valid. But yeah, there's this whole business side. So that I always have a lot of doubts with that. Is this going to be a project that is exciting to editors and to the marketing people? You know what I mean? Yeah. So
totally relate to that. I totally get what you're saying there, and that's very, very frustrating to deal with. And me, those kind of situations just create doubts about other things too. It's like suddenly I start to doubt everything once I hear something like that.
Yeah.
But as we went through, I felt like we touched on a lot of different areas. But I want to kind of focus in now on specifically, everybody's writing process. I thought, since this is, doubt in the writing process, it'd be a good time to kind of go around, let everybody talk a little bit about their writing process. And specifically, if you can, think of times during the process where you have the most doubts. I know Emily already mentioned, I think it was Emily mentioned at the beginning of the book, that you don't remember how to write a book anymore, and you kind of doubt that. Do you want to? I feel like you good to go ahead and go, Emily, and we'll just go back around the other way, or do we want to?
So just yeah, I mean, definitely. I think maybe we all deal with this. Is that middle of Act 2 moment? That it is always a challenge. Well, okay, let's just say all of Act 2 is a challenge, because typically it can maybe run too long, or you can get bogged down in it. And that's kind of, for me, that's kind of the period where I seem to lose a little steam or enthusiasm. And then it just becomes this sort of discipline of, I'm going to get up every day and just keep this output of a word count every day. And that's when it gets to be challenging, I think, for me.
Absolutely. That's for me too. And I had someone give me some advice once about that, and I thought it was the best advice I'd ever gotten, at least for me. And for that book I was writing, I had gotten to sort of that Act 2 area, and I felt like I was so excited about the first part of the book.
Right.
And it's just suddenly I didn't feel that excited anymore, and I didn't really know where it was going. And the advice was simply think of the craziest thing that could happen. I mean, right now, what's the craziest thing that could happen in this book?
Yeah.
And then suddenly I had this idea. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. And it kind of carried the rest of the book for me. That book is not published yet, but it's out there right now making the round. So hopefully it'll be a really good story if it gets picked up somewhere.
Good.
Travis, what about your writing process and where you have doubts along the way?
Yeah, I never really thought about it specifically until Emily mentioned it being at the end of Act 2, but I feel like that is kind of the same for me. I like really heavily outline all of my books, so like I always have my plan set, and I know all the big like cool set pieces that everything's leading to. And so it's never really a thing where I'm like doubting what my plan is, I guess, but more like I'm getting to a certain point and then I'm thinking like, I think this is cool and I'm excited about it, but like, is this just some stupid thing that like no one else is going to think is cool? Like, and then I start to doubt like the pacing of the thing and doubt kind of like, again, like, is anybody going to care about this? And then that pretty much lasts all the way through the rest of writing the book and then editing the book. And it doesn't really let up until I kind of like send it to my beta readers and they tell me what, I don't know if they're lying or not, but they tell me that they thought it was cool. And then I can kind of relax a little bit, at least. I can believe that they're telling the truth.
Yeah, that sounds like a good strategy against it is our beta readers. Definitely.
Yeah.
Jeff, writing process.
Yeah. So for me, this is something that's continually evolving. For Paladin Unbound, I didn't know I was even going to pursue trying to get it published when I wrote it. I just kind of wrote it for fun and for myself and wanted to see if I could actually do it. And so I didn't do any plotting at all. I just, pants the whole thing. And then I realized once I, put it out in the world and I was, thinking about it, I was like, okay, now I got to follow through and deliver a fantasy. I kind of made a promise for people that I was going to, put together this trilogy, and I had 2 more books to write. And so, I knew where I wanted to go with the series, but I didn't really have a lot of meat on the bone. So I plotted those out. I wouldn't say too heavily, but enough to get the major points of the plot down and know, what the scenes were going to be and where I was going to take it. And so that actually helped me take a lot of doubt out of the process, just kind of putting some structure around it. If I was doing a standalone, I might not necessarily do that, but for a longer series, it seems to have helped me out a lot in terms of planning it and just taking a lot of that uncertainty out of the process.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like the second book in a series doubt to me. That's probably the most I've ever doubted myself is on that second book of the series. All right, Josh.
Yeah, speaking of a second book in a series doubt, I just finished a draft of my second book and am in the process of sort of doing final revisions before I send it off to my editors. Yeah, I think my process changes so much based on the project I'm working on, and I think the only things that are really consistent. I mean, I sometimes plan books out in detail or stories out in detail, and sometimes I just kind of sort of run headfirst in and see what I find. And I think based on the project, sometimes that makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. But I think the thing that's maybe most consistent with me that sort of relieves doubt is just like sort of sitting down and showing up every day. I think the thing that I have the most doubt about, and this is something that is really pervasive at every point in the writing process for me, is like the sort of ethical question. I mean, I think like, you sit down and you write a book and it's presumably because you have something to say, a good story to tell or whatever it is. And I think a lot about like what I ask of readers, like this is a pretty long book and it's a lot of time, right? And we don't have that much time on the earth. And so, do I feel okay asking somebody to spend the time to read my book? And are they really going to get something out of it? And so I think a lot about that. I write about the environment often, and climate change is like a real, very important thing. And here I am telling a fantasy story about it. And so is that okay? Or, is it, et cetera. So I think about like those bigger kind of,
Yeah.
I guess, ethical concerns. And
Yes,
those like really, really stop me up. And so I think the only way that I get through is just like, I'm just going to focus on like, I'm just going to try and write 2,000 words today. And if they're crap, they're crap. If they're great, they're great. If they don't accomplish anything, then they don't accomplish anything. But like, this is what I can do, right? So kind of setting achievable by me goals, as opposed to like the goal of I want this book to affect the world and change people's minds about, is like that's not something I can really control. And so yeah.
So if you think about it, that's sort of, the whole writing process is about the small goals, and hopefully creating a bigger thing.
Yeah.
But I got to say, your doubts are much more noble than mine, Josh. I
don't know about that.
Making money, that kind of stuff. But now we'll go ahead and go to Jim next.
Well, I mean, doubts are pretty much whack-a-mole for me throughout the entire process. But I would say one of the main areas it creeps up is in basically interpreting the notes I get back. So from my beta readers or when, my professional editor, I want to make sure that I'm using them the best way I can. And I'm often not sure if I'm doing that. Yeah. I can say, so one of the ways I get around that, at least with my beta readers, is I always try to have at least 5. That way I can use numbers to tell whether or not it's somebody's opinion versus an actual problem. If 4 people come back with the same thing, it doesn't matter what I think, it's a problem, I need to fix it. But if it's just one person's, it's really helpful. But if it's just one person who had that note and I didn't see it anywhere else, then it's on me to interpret whether or not that's something that needs a change. And that's when the doubt comes in. Should I change it because they brought it up, or is that just a personal opinion and I can leave it? Anyway, that's a constant uphill battle. Luckily, my editor is really good. So it's basically just being like, oh God, she's right, and changing stuff 99% of the time. But the doubt's still there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We'll go ahead and I thought next we could talk a little bit about how rejection factors in to doubt, and just in general, how you handle rejection. So we're gonna stay with you, Jim, and then work our way back around.
Okay. Well, before I decided to self-pub, I did the rounds of querying with 2 different books. So my current book and then one that's in the process of getting rewritten. And of course, the query trenches are just rejection city and doubt city. But I would say beta readers, honestly, were the thing that kept me the most sane. I had quite a few, and I always try to have beta readers, not just readers from within the genre I'm writing, but kind of across the genre, because good writing is good writing. And so I like to see, what somebody who isn't necessarily versed in the tropes, what they think about what's going on. And my beta readers really liked it. So that really helped keep me grounded, where if I wasn't hitting pay dirt with agents, it wasn't because my writing was bad. It was maybe a hard time selling it, or just wasn't their jam, but having that feedback, that previous feedback, really helped keep me centered.
Yeah, I got to get me some beta readers, I guess. That sounds
helpful.
All right, Josh, how do you deal with rejection, and how does that factor into your doubts?
Yeah, I think rejection is a huge part of it. I think sometimes it's rejection itself, and sometimes it's just the possibility of rejection, right? We talk a lot about self-rejecting, and the sort of erecting the rejection in your head before it even appears in your inbox. I think for me, the way that I deal with it, or the way that I think about it, is I don't want to send out a project of any kind that I don't believe in, and so I think I remember when I started querying with the Forever Sea, and I would email maybe like 3 or 4 agents every couple days or something like that, and I had wanted to query much earlier in the process. You finish it and you think like, maybe it's time. I don't know. You know, you sent it out to a couple of people and they say like, yeah, this is great. You know, fix these things up, and you do it. And there's a process, or there's a sort of point where I think, for me at least, I thought maybe I could get it accepted. Maybe somebody would pick this up, right? And I waited for a little while and sort of sat with the book for a little bit longer and revised it a couple more times. And so when rejection started coming back in, I think I was able to believe the thing that so many agents say, which is, you know, they all have some version of like, you know, publishing is a subjective business. This isn't about you. It's about, you know, what I'm looking for right now. And I think it made it easier for me to trust that, because I really believed in my project. And I thought like, well, if you don't want it and I really like it the way it is, then this wouldn't be a good fit. So I, you know, I just like, anytime I got a rejection, I sent it out again. And I have before submitted short stories, for instance, that I think I didn't really believe in, and I would get rejections, and after 2 or 3 I would think like, maybe I need to change this, maybe it's not right. And I think that's a sign, not that like it's not of publishable quality, whatever that means, but that like I need to believe in it more before I send it out. So yeah, so I think about that a lot. But rejection is just, you know, it's just sort of part of how it goes. It's just like the nature of publishing, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the best method of dealing with it, is just to send it back out, believe in what you got. Jeff?
Yeah, you know, this brings back memories of the first negative feedback I got on Paladin Unbound after it was published. You know, you get that first negative review or something, and that one hurts, and you have to kind of you know, roll with that punch, and it hurts more than the beautiful 4 and 5 star reviews you get actually help, you know, in terms of how it makes you feel. And what it comes down to for me is, you know, I just had to understand that my writing is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to like the stories I have to tell. Not everybody's going to connect with my characters. And it's, at the end of the day, it's okay for them to be wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that 100%. Travis?
Yeah, kind of just building off of what Josh and Jeff were both saying. Just reminding myself that it all is subjective, and like, if I am satisfied with the story and I think it's a cool story and I believe in what I've written, then that should be good enough. And I mean, I obsessively check my Goodreads ratings because I'm an idiot. I shouldn't look at it at all, but I can't help myself. And so, I mean, when I see like a 1 star or a 2 star rating come in, it like stings for a second, but I kind of just have to remind myself, like, it's fine that they didn't like it because I like it. And I mean, I have read books that I didn't like before either, and I don't know, I didn't like think less of the author or anything for it. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, that kind of helps keep me grounded a bit.
Yeah, I check my Goodreads too. And I know it's stupid. I'm just like you. I can't stop myself. And but yeah, I think that's absolutely the best perspective in terms of like reviews and ratings is just, you know, you're not going to please everybody. There's no book in the world that's going to please everybody. You know, somebody's going to always have something negative to say. So, all right, Emily.
So recently I've gone through an experience of switching agents, finding a new agent with a particular finished manuscript. And it was really an interesting kind of exercise in this whole process of doubt and trusting yourself. And because, I mean, I won't go into details about what it's about, but it just was a really tricky concept that I knew when I started writing it, it was going to be tough to pull off. It was going to be something really challenging for me, but I thought it was such a great idea, and I had such a vision for where I wanted it to be. And so my former agent just didn't get it. She just, and I think probably didn't love it either, which is fine. But as I was getting back into that querying process, I was sort of encountering a lot of other agents who also didn't get it, and I could tell by some of the comments they were making. And I think it was a real learning experience for me, because I was vacillating between having a lot of doubts, not so much in my writing, but in the whole idea and the concept. And, that was really hard to think, oh my gosh, I thought this was a wonderful hook, a wonderful idea, a wonderful concept. Okay, maybe the book isn't perfect yet, but I really, really believe in this idea. And just to kind of periodically hear agents say, I just don't, that was tough. And it was really, it felt like a big setback. And then, I remember telling my husband, I'm not ready to put this book in a drawer yet, because there's something in me that just thinks that this is too much fun and that my readers will enjoy this. And, it's something that I felt like was kind of fresh and different and unique. And, anyway, long story short, I did end up finding a new agent, and the way I knew she was the right one was in a phone conversation, and she got it. Like, she understood the book. She did not say, a lot of the other agents had said, well, I'm confused by this, or I don't understand this, or explain this to me. And she didn't say any of that. She was like, I love this, and I understand what you were trying to do. And that, and it was just sort of like we had a meeting of the minds. And I think sometimes it was a lesson to me in, yeah, there's a time to put a book in a drawer for sure. But there's also a time to really stick by a book that maybe needs some more editing, or whatever, but just needs to find the right either agent or editor or audience. And yeah, I think that's just been a really specific lesson that I've gone through, having to kind of continue to believe in this particular book. And just I'm kind of an optimistic person. Like, I just always kind of think things are going to work out, and they don't always, measure, the results don't measure up to my expectations, but I always kind of go into this like, this is going to be great. And, not everybody's going to love it, but enough people are going to love it that, it's going to be cool and fun. And, maybe I'll sell a few books. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm like, yes, I've found this champion for me who really seems to understand what I'm doing. And that helps to allay a lot of fear and doubt, I think. So
that is a great story. And I'm so excited to hear, because I think I had talked to you maybe back in the fall or something, and you were kind of still what's that?
In the dark days.
Yeah, you were kind of still in the middle of all that, and I'm so glad that you came out on the other side so well.
Yeah.
And I'm also kind of hearing the theme is just, one of the ways to fight doubt is just, you've got to be the biggest believer in your own work.
Yeah.
And I again and again, that seemed to come up. I believed in it, so I eventually saw it through.
Yeah.
I wanted to pause really quick here, because I see that we have some people in the comment section. I just wanted to mention that if you guys that are listening in right now have any questions for anybody specific or anything, just drop it in the comments, and we'll be getting to those in a little while. But feel free to drop those in. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and maybe this is just me, so if y'all don't have as much to say about this, that's fine. But the thing that kept coming up as I was thinking about some questions for this was this whole idea of sort of, imposter syndrome. And do you ever have these moments where you just kind of look around? It's like, I don't belong, maybe even on a panel, or I don't belong doing this or whatever with these other writers who are more successful than me, or that sort of thing. I know that that's something that I have dealt with from time to time. So just, we don't have to go around, but I'll just open it up. Does anybody want to comment on that or feel like they've dealt with that?
All the
Yeah,
time.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, being a new indie author, in a sea of fantastic writers putting out, all these amazing books, I think it's only natural for you to, be unsure of where you fit in and if you fit in and everything. And so, I don't know if it gets better over time or not, but, definitely, get a sense of that every once in a while.
Yeah. It can go either way. I think it's with when I think about my career, such as it is, I think about, a lot of that at the beginning, and then it went away, and then here lately it's kind of come back again. It's like always, you're like, do I belong? Do I fit in? That sort of thing. So yeah.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think it comes up a lot as a self-published author when you see like other self-published authors who are like super, super successful, like making an actual living off of their books. And you're kind of sitting there wondering like, well, I thought mine was good too. Like, why is no one picking mine up? Like, is it because theirs really is that much better than mine, or do they have like more advertising behind them, or do they just get lucky, or what's going on? And it kind of gets compounded by, I don't know, just like seeing like some blogs maybe who like talk about a bunch of the same self-published authors, and then that makes you think like, well, maybe there's a reason why they don't want to review my book also, or like do an interview with me or anything. So yeah, I think obviously probably with every author this is the case, but I think with being self-published, it's really easy to kind of compare yourself to other people's success and just doubt that you're doing anything correctly, and that maybe you are screwing something up, and it's kind of just your fault.
I think along those lines, I feel like a lot of it's kind of self gatekeeping. Like, do I count, right? What counts as being a real author? What counts as being really successful? And, just kind of realizing it's an old cliche, but the whole, every author, every book, every process is completely different. And I always just try to ground myself in the idea that it's the story that matters. It's that end product. Is that successful? Did that come out the way I wanted it to come out? And if that's the case, then I did my job. And treating it more of a, did I do my job or not do my job, versus what do people think of the job I did? It's super hard to keep in that headspace, but it's what I always try to pull myself back to.
Yeah, logically I know that, but emotionally I don't know.
Exactly. No, you're spot on with that.
I've been thinking a lot about imposter syndrome, and I think I felt it at sort of every point so far in my, admittedly very short career. And I think like a little bit of imposter syndrome is maybe like kind of good, right? Because I think I don't want to be the kind of author who's like, yeah, I totally belong here, and I'm great, and I'm awesome, and I don't need anybody's help, and like, like I don't want to be that person, right?
Yeah.
And so like a little bit of just like, I don't know, I also don't want anybody to feel like excluded from the publishing community or the literary community, and so I'm not suggesting that, but I think like just like a tiny bit of doubt, right? Is maybe sometimes good because it pushes us forward. I also think a lot about what I'm comparing, like not only to whom I'm comparing myself, but what parts of my writing process I'm comparing to what other parts. And so oftentimes we only see the kind of polished final version from other authors. And I'm comparing like me in my grubby pajamas thinking like, I don't even know what I'm going to do, banging my head against the keyboard, to somebody's like perfect polished book that has come out after years and years of work. Right. And so
That's a really
I
good
think
point.
it's like really easy to feel like an imposter there, but
Yeah.
it's like unfair to yourself. And the biggest thing that I somebody gave me this advice, and I can't remember exactly who it was. But I've just tried to be like as grateful as I can for everything I get to experience. And so even if I feel like I don't know if I really sort of belong in this room with these people, or if I like I shouldn't be on this panel, like, etc. I just sort of feel like maybe that's true and maybe it's not, but like how awesome that I get to be there, right? Like that's
Yeah.
just so great. And yeah, I think that has sort of helped. I still feel it, but I also just, I try to think like it's just I just feel so grateful that I get this opportunity, and I don't want to let the opportunity go. And if it was a mistake that I was given this opportunity, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to do my best with it. So I think about that a lot.
I really like that. That's a really good way of thinking of it.
Can I say something along the lines of that? I have been on panels with people, with other authors who are far and away more successful than I am. And I remember the first couple of times that happened, I was very much like, why am I here? What am I doing here? And what do I have to offer? And I don't typically feel a lot of imposter syndrome. I just feel like, I work really hard, and I know I'm not the best writer. I'm not the worst writer either. I feel like I have something to offer. So, I always kind of feel like, I'm good. I'm here. I'm thankful to be here, and I belong here. But yeah, on those panels, what I noticed happening over and over again were just these incredibly successful and also incredibly generous authors who were so friendly and open and giving and welcoming, and made me feel like I did belong there. Maybe not because I had the level of success they had, but because they respected me as a fellow writer. And I really appreciated that. And that made a big difference. Like, I don't know. I just think that's a real gift that some of those really best-selling authors can give to other mid-list authors, or debut authors. I think it was really helpful to me and made me feel like and there were few experiences where one really successful author at Thriller Fest took a bunch of us. We met for drinks, and we peppered her with questions. She answered all our questions. We were like, what do you do when this happens? What do you do when this happens? And she just was an open book, and it was really, really cool.
Emily, do you feel comfortable saying who it was? Because it's such a good comment.
Yeah, it was JT Ellison.
Okay, yeah.
And I think about that night. I was like, I have another question. I just thought, like, she's written so many books and been really, really successful. And I mean, she was really generous that night and just kind of was honest and told us. And it did make I think it made all of us who were there feel like we belonged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely think of people like that, writers like that in my own life that have just gone above and beyond to help me out and to bolster my confidence. And then it sort of makes me feel guilty now sitting here thinking about all the doubts I've had, because they would probably be disappointed in me for that. But does anybody have anything else to say about the imposter syndrome before I take us to something that came up? Go ahead.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry, this is like a thing that I think about a ton, and so you can just mute me when you're ready for me to be done.
Keep going.
I think a lot about how the publishing industry is like built around people feeling pretty discontented, and it is built around making people feel discontented. And it seems to me like authors like the one that Emily was talking about and experiences like that, like holding those moments close and knowing like, there's stuff to struggle with and there's stuff to strive against, but there's also really great stuff to celebrate sometimes. And like keeping that stuff close too just feels like a really like sometimes revolutionary act in this like industry that is just, it's just so doom and gloom, and it's so easy to feel doom and gloom about it, right? You go on social media or you go to events or whatever it is, and you think like, well, I thought I was doing okay, but there's that person over there who's doing way better than me, or there's that person over there, etc. And it's so easy to kind of fall down that rabbit hole. And I actually think like publishing is like a vampire that exists on that kind of stuff often. And so I think it's like a really good idea to sort of like hold those good memories and moments really close and let them sort of fuel you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's gotten worse with COVID too, because we don't see each other in person as much. This is great, David running something like this, so people can get together and kind of have some FaceTime. But it kind of leads me into my next topic, because I want to talk a little bit about social media and how it might affect the role of doubt. Or maybe it may help alleviate doubt. I've had to do both for me. But honestly, in the end, for me, I found it was actually causing me more doubts than it seemed to be helping. I'm not completely off social media, but I'm pretty much off. I don't do a lot on it anymore. But I was curious to get y'all's takes. Maybe you've had a different experience or the same. I don't know. Emily, we'll start with you. Where are you with social media and doubts?
Well, I'm in the valley of social media right now. Like I don't do much. This whole TikTok book talk thing has started, and I will just say, and this might be politically incorrect, and just forgive me, it is my own feelings of doubt, but I just feel like that is for authors of a certain age, and I am past that age. I mean, okay, when your own high school and older children are like, "Mom, do not get on TikTok. Don't do it." I'm like, you're probably right, and I don't belong there, and I'm just gonna stick with my sort of old school, like, take the best, picture I can on Instagram, and that's that. So I think I've really kind of capped it at your basic, like, Instagram, Facebook. But oh yeah, it can be like, if you're struggling, I know for me, if I'm struggling and feeling a lot of doubt and feeling like I'm falling behind schedule, or something's not happening for me, it can be a really not a great place to be. And so I just kind of tiptoe quietly away from it.
Yeah, that's where I've been here lately too.
Yeah.
Travis, how about you?
I guess for me, the social media doubt is kind of twofold. It goes back to what I was talking about a minute ago, like seeing other authors, like I guess tweeting out their like milestones, like saying, "Oh, I released my book last month, and now it hit 1,000 ratings on Amazon," and then I'm sitting here like, "Well, I just hit 60 ratings on my book I released 4 years ago, so that's cool." And then the other side of it is that I have kind of like a big audience on social media from something completely unrelated to books, and so it gets kind of discouraging at times when I'll like tweet some stupid joke tweet about like not having had a flavor of Takis before, and it gets like 300 likes, and then I tweet a link to like my new book release, like a big cover reveal, and it gets like 18.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuff kind of just makes you it always comes back to me to that refrain of just like, does anybody like care about this actually?
Yeah.
But then I guess the flip side of it is when I do check the mentions and somebody like tweets a photo of like a paperback that they just got and they're like really excited to read it, then like that's really exciting for me also. So yeah, that side of it is good.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. And I mean, yeah, I can relate to, posting a picture of my dog, getting way more likes than anything I would post about, a book or something like that. So yeah, I mean, but at a certain point, I just kind of got, why am I counting these things? Why do I, I got very frustrated with the process a little bit there. But it's not about me; it's about y'all. So we'll go ahead and go to Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely cuts both ways, but for me, I'd have to say that my experience with social media has been very positive. I mean, I've met a lot of bloggers and booktubers and other authors who've all been, super welcoming and supportive, enthusiastic, and have helped Paladin Unbound reach a broader audience than I think it would have gotten to if I had done it all myself, without the help of the community on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. So yeah, you can definitely see the downside when you're looking at those reviews, like those mentions like Travis was talking about with so and so has 1,000 reviews after a month or something like that, and you're laboring to get your first 50 or whatever. But at the same time, I've built some really great relationships, made some great friends, and people have generally been really kind and supportive. So I think it's been great so far.
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it too, and you can't discount that. That's why I think this is sort of the most interesting question to me, is because I see both sides of this so clearly. Josh, how do you see it?
Yeah, I'm sort of trapped halfway in between, I think. I mostly just use Twitter. I have an Instagram, and I think I maybe have like 17 photos up there, and 9 of them are of my dog, that sort of thing. So and I tweet, I don't know, somewhat regularly, but I think for me, there's a lot of sort of social anxiety around it. I've been really lucky to have some wonderful, Jeff, you were talking about bloggers picking up your book, and and I've excuse me, been lucky to have a similar thing happen, and I just always worry that I'm not really expressing how grateful I am to these people adequately, and so I think that there's that kind of like anxiety that I just have about social media in general. I think it is a place that can really be a sort of accelerant to the fires of doubt if you let it be. I think it can also be a place where you can like celebrate milestones from other people and discover interesting stuff. For me, it's I think I found success and happiness with Twitter, at least, by mostly not treating it like the real world, because I don't think it is representative of the real world, and sort of curating what I'm seeing. And so it's not about the sort of echo chamber or anything like that. It's more about like, what kind of experience do I want to have on here? Because I guess I'm just not at all convinced that like I am good enough at social media to sell books there. And so if that's not really what I'm up to, what am I up to? And it's mostly like, here's this funny, weird thing my 5-year-old daughter said.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? And I don't have to be an author to, to tweet that, So I think a lot about like, what do I want out of this? And mostly what I want is like fun interactions with people I know a little bit. And I sort of leave the booky stuff mostly out of it. I tweet when I have news. But I don't sort of make a big deal out of it, I guess.
Yeah. I like that. Jim.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have a lot of doubts. I don't get a lot of joy out of social media, but as a self-published author, you gotta be on Twitter. You have to have a presence. And for me, it really divides between the people and the platform. Like, I've met some really amazing people and connect with them and talk with them. And it's on a person-to-person basis. I've had a lot of enjoyment that way, but one big problem I have is time zones. I'm here in Switzerland, but outside of the UK, all of my readers are North America. And so trying to find time windows when anybody will actually see what I post is really, really difficult. Otherwise I have to, stay up super late and basically just have a night with my thumbs going on my phone. And that's no fun. And also just the general mood. I find with book Twitter, there's a lot of drama, like a lot, always, constantly, over a lot. And so it's really hard to, with the time zones, I'm always catching up. It's like, oh, who said what? How am I supposed to make a comment? And it's just a lot. I don't necessarily enjoy the floodgates as much as some people do.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Well, we're getting close to take. We got a few questions from the comments here, but I wanted to ask just one or two more things before we kind of wrap up. First of all, the advice I always hear when I'm feeling doubt or down about a project is, walk away from it. Take a break. I've got a buddy he's a writer too. So, I mean, he kind of knows what he's talking about, but that's usually his advice. Take a break for a month. Don't write. I found that pretty much impossible to do, but maybe I should try it. I just want to get y'all's thoughts on that. I tend to not be able to take breaks and always be working on something, but maybe that's the missing ingredient that would help me. How do y'all feel about that? When doubts creep in, when things aren't going well for your project, take a break, push on through. We'll start back down there with Jim.
So I am in the camp of do take the break. I think it's partly because I tend to write through my book chronologically. And so everything I'm putting down affects what's to come. And so for me, I can't do that, just write crap and keep moving and then fix it later, because if I write the crap now, it's affecting everything I continue to write. And so it A, feels like I'm spinning my wheels, and B, actually can damage the flow of the story. So just because of my style, I have to stop. But that's completely stylistic. I completely understand the people who can just keep going and use that momentum to push themselves through. And I see a lot of merit in that. I just personally can't.
Well, I'm curious, when you stop, do you stop writing completely, or do you go write some short stories, or what?
It depends. It depends, I guess, on the gap. I have one book that I'm about a third of the way into that it's my baby. It's the world I created, the characters. It's just my baby. And I got to a point where I wasn't good enough to keep going. What I had built deserved better than the ideas I was coming up with. And so I just completely stopped, set it aside. It will get finished and it will be amazing, because I won't give it anything less, but I just wasn't in the spot to do it then with my skill set. I've had other stuff where it's a day and then come back to it, or a month and then come back to it. And yeah, sometimes it's short stories or songs or poems, or, something to just keep the word wheels turning. But kind of just depends on what the problem is that's stopping me.
Gotcha. All right. Josh.
Yeah, Jim, that's what you're saying reminds me of that story of Neil Gaiman working on the Graveyard book. I don't know if any of you have read that, but I listened to him talk about it once, and he said something like, I had this idea for this book about this boy who lived in a graveyard a long time ago, and I sort of started it and stopped because I thought, I'm not good enough to write this. And he came back to it, 20 years later and said, well, I haven't gotten any better, but I got to start it sometime, right? Yeah, I don't know. I hear what you're saying though about having a baby and thinking I have it up here and it's not ready to be down here yet.
Yeah.
I think I'm always up for taking a break from writing if things aren't going well. I try and stay engaged with the work somehow, so that might be just free writing by hand, once a day, or just trying to think about it throughout the day, sort of staying in contact with it. I always have a sort of cheat project on the side that I can sort of go over to and work on. And the biggest thing for me when I take breaks, often it's a sign that I'm not reading enough. I think we don't talk very much about reading as writers. We talk so much about needing to push stuff out. But I think like you got to be putting fuel in, and oftentimes when I am stuck, it's because I'm not putting anything into my head to sort of fuel me through my own writing. And so I'll sort of go off and read for a while, and maybe it's a couple days or maybe it's a week or whatever. And usually that is enough to kind of knock things loose and keep things going. But yeah, I think reading is just it's just so important. And at least for me, and I imagine for a lot of us, it's the reason we started writing, right? Because we read stuff we loved and we thought, I should try that, or I could do that, or I have an idea. And sort of going back to that sort of first spark is really important for me.
Yep. For me, I'm more of a keep at it kind of a guy. For me, I think if stopping and taking a break makes it that much harder to come back to it and get started again. I kind of feel like I kind of lose traction sometimes with it when I walk away for too long. I might not necessarily write in that scene. I might move to another part of the story or another point of view that I'm working on or something like that. I might just spend some time thinking about the characters involved and am I really understanding their goals and motivations and things like that. And maybe you kind of have that, kind of epiphany that it's not working because I was off base with what this character would be doing in this situation or something like that. And you can make those adjustments and then it kind of just comes back to you and you get back in the flow. So in my experience, sticking with it and everything has worked better for me.
Yeah, my answer would be kind of a blend of everyone who's spoken already. I write my stuff chronologically also. I can't really wrap my head around like jumping around the narrative. I kind of just have to push through it and like because sometimes I heavily outline everything, so I know the major events, but there are a lot of like little details, whether it's about like backstories or like world building or stuff that I sprinkle in as I go that will eventually affect other stuff later. But I am also very momentum based when I'm writing. Ever since the pandemic, when I've been writing, my goal is always to like write a chapter every weekday. And so I give myself the weekends off. But yeah. So I really thrive on that momentum of just like sitting down, getting the chapter done, and like I can basically look at a calendar and say like, this is the day I'm going to write the last chapter, unless something goes terribly wrong at work and it prevents me from writing that day or something. But then like Josh was saying about refueling, that's what I kind of do when I'm like done with one part of the process. So like once I finish the first draft, before I start revisions on it, I'll take like a week or two off to just kind of relax. I'll like read a bunch or like play video games, watch movies during that time that I would otherwise be writing, so that it can kind of like recharge me creatively, like Josh was saying. And it'll maybe like give me ideas for stuff I can add when I go back to revise, and also just to give myself time to like not be thinking about this story that I've been constantly thinking about for 3 months every waking moment. And then I'll get back in and revise again, like every weekday, a couple chapters. And then when I send that off to beta readers, that's when I get to take a break again, and so on and so forth. I don't know if I answered I don't remember what the question was. I don't know if I answered it.
Okay. But I think you did. I think you did. Yes, I'm sitting here thinking about something that hit me as you were talking, but I'm going to save that and let Emily have a chance. So in case, Emily, you've forgotten the question too, it's basically, is it better to stop and take a break or push on through your doubts?
Well, you know what? I've done both. I used to be I was very big on momentum, and just you keep going until you finish that first draft. And after I had written a couple of books, I began to trust myself more that I could take some breaks and not maybe lose a little momentum, but not lose track of the story. But there are some very specific things that I do when I kind of hit that moment of needing to kind of be re-inspired, or I need a new idea. And one of them is that I go to movies, and it's so weird for me when I love movies, like in the theater movies. When I go to a movie, there is sometimes that I will kind of space out a little bit, and it's almost like my subconscious mind figures out the solution to a problem, and it may not have anything to do with what's happening in the narrative of the film, but it's just something about being immersed in a story, and my brain kind of, it's the strangest thing, but I love
The
it.
exact same thing happens to me with movies.
Yeah.
And and I just find that kind of fascinating. The other thing that I like to do is read interviews with artists or musicians, or not typically writers. I'd love to read interviews with different kind of artists, and maybe not super successful artists, but maybe ones that are more like on the fringe, or they're like somewhat successful, and just kind of find out about their process. One of the best interviews that I listened to was one that Ray LaMontagne gave about his music. And it was so inspiring to me. I started taking notes, and I have it in my journal, in the front page. And I wrote down these key words that he said, that he talked about when he was making music and writing songs. And they are, he wants to be relaxed. He wants to be unconstricted. He wants to be playful. He wants to be imperfect. He wants to be messy. And he wants to create something that is living and breathing. And that was so incredibly inspiring to me, to just, give myself that freedom to make mistakes and be messy, and the biggest one for me is to be playful.
Yeah.
So that is one that I tell myself over and over again: just be playful, just have fun, and just make it fun for you, because if it's fun for you, it's gonna be fun for the reader.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is really inspiring. And then this other thing, I came upon this book. It's called How to Be an Artist by Jerry Salse. He's like the executive, like head critic at the New Yorker and Vulture, and for art critic. And it's just these little tiny vignettes about how to be an artist. And it is so encouraging. And it's kind of all of these out of the box ideas about, I don't know, your process and not worrying. It's just all very encouraging. So that kind of stuff really helps me a lot with the doubts, and also if I'm stuck.
Yeah, that being the playful thing really resonates with me too. I mean, what a way to banish doubt, really.
Yes,
if you just go in with the attitude of playfulness, of almost like play, from like when you were a little kid kind of play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When
I
you're
like
a
that.
kid and you're in the backyard and you're making up a story with your friends,
Yeah.
like, and now we're going here and you go down in the ditch. And that's all very real to me.
And that's what we're trying to recapture anyway, right? As writers, is that feeling of telling somebody a story and being excited about it. So yeah, I mean, that's perfect. And one thing I just did want to add that I thought about, and I thought about when Josh was talking, and Travis too, and then with your movie thing, is yes, I definitely agree with the reading. You've got to. I mean, for me, I've got to keep reading. But I found interesting, for me, nonfiction is really a great thing for me to read.
Oh yeah.
To kind of help get my gears turning. But even beyond the reading, something I've been discovering in the last really just probably 4 or 5 months, and this has kind of coincided with being off social media mostly, is just trying to give myself opportunities to be bored again. Like it sounds revolutionary, at least for me, but I take a walk and don't take my phone, so I'm like literally I have to entertain myself as I walk. And that's sort of that same writing instinct just come, at least for me, that's kind of where it all starts for me, is the desire to entertain myself, first. So that's helped me tremendously to kind of overcome some roadblocks and doubts and that sort of thing. I thought, I feel like this is probably a good time to go ahead and go to the chat, unless one of you guys has something else you want to say about that. I feel like I might have jumped in. Somebody may have had something else.
No, good.
All right. Well, actually, I misspoke earlier. We only have one question from the chat, but it is a good one. It says, if you could go back and tell younger you some advice about how to adjust after you launched your debut, what would that advice be? So I'll open that up to anybody who wants to fill that one first. Go back to tell your younger self after your debut some advice. What would it be?
I think for me, it would definitely be get on the marketing as early as possible as a self-published author. I signed up for SPFBO a few months after I launched and ended up a semifinalist, which was great. But that was my main marketing push. I really screwed up my early launch. I think I would try to do a book tour probably right off the bat next time, and I'm intending to do that with future books, and just really, really try to get on. Not only getting the word out, but getting the word out to the right places. Really research blogs and try to, put the book in front of places where it's likely to land well. I just had way too slow of a roll when I started, and I definitely won't do that again.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the blog tour stuff was really great. Great experience. I definitely recommend doing something like that, but you have to kind of come out swinging. You only have a very limited window of time to start the momentum. And when you're an unknown author starting from, the ground floor, you have to throw a lot of effort into it to get recognized. There's a lot of other stuff out there for people to spend their time reading. And you're like, hey, I'm this guy you don't know. Why don't you come and spend your time with my book? And, you have to give them a reason to do that. And so you can't be bashful and kind of, pull your punches on the marketing front. You have to go out and get it. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel like part of that, for me, Jeff was kind of speaking about it earlier, but just kind of like engaging with like various communities more. Not necessarily like spending all your time on Twitter or anything, because that sounds awful and miserable, but even things like checking out like the fantasy subreddit, or even like more niche genre subreddits, and just kind of not like hawking your stuff all the time, but just like engaging with people, just chatting about stuff, and kind of getting yourself out there. Because I mean, with my first book, I like put so much time and energy and money into it, and for whatever reason, I thought like, yeah, I think this is cool. I dropped all this money on the cover art. The cover is beautiful, and I released it, and then like nobody bought it because no one knew it was released. Because I mean, no one knew who I was, obviously. So yeah, I think that's something that I would do differently, is kind of like start to like actually engage with people who are involved with this stuff and fans of it to begin with.
Anybody else got an answer? That's a tough question. Anybody else got?
I will just say, for me, my first book has always been my best-selling book. And I think I would definitely like gently take my younger self aside and say, it's not always going to be this. Like, just brace yourself. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And just like cool your jets and enjoy this. And, you know, there's a pandemic coming.
I think if I could give myself some advice, I think everything that everybody has said is very good advice. Mine is maybe like a little squishier or a little less kind of useful, I guess. But I think I would try and remind myself or tell myself that that writing is the thing that you like more than publishing. And that like the writing is the real reward. And I would also try and remind myself that like one book doesn't define an author. And so if it does really well, or if it does really poorly, or if people love it or they hate it or whatever, it is an artifact of your past as a writer. And presumably you've gotten better since then. And so, you know, I think sometimes we write stuff and we think like, that's who I am as a writer, but like you got better over the course of writing it. So even when it's published, it's like a marker of like, you know, you 1.0, and now here you are 3.0 or something. And so so I would just remind myself about that, I think, because it's so easy to kind of invest yourself, you know, sort of who you are and who you will always be as an author into like one book or one moment or that sort of thing. And so
I agree with that. And I think publishing, the industry plays into that. You know, you're only as good as your last book. And, you know, I think it does take a lot of sort of strength to kind of push against that idea. But I love that.
Has everybody had a chance to answer that one? Okay. I'll throw in my quick 2 cents on that one too. For me, I would tell myself to be a little bit more focused, because my problem then, and probably still now, was that I'm a little all over the place. And my first book was horror, and then I turned around and wrote a literary novel, and then I turned around and wrote a crime novel, and you know, so I think I would have, and now I'm back to writing horror again, which I realized was kind of my first love. I got sidetracked in some things. I wish I had kind of just stuck with what that first one was, but you know, that's who I am as a writer, I guess. So I want to go ahead and now give you guys a chance just to kind of tell us where you are and what is next for you. Is there anything you want to promote or talk about? We'll start with Emily and just let everybody have a chance, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm with a new agent and a new book, and probably going out on sub, hopefully in the next couple months. So starting over. But I'm excited about it. The book I believe in. So we'll see if anybody else likes it. Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Travis?
The final book in my Houndstooth trilogy, Dirt King, comes out a week from today. So check that out if you want to, I guess. And in March, I will be launching a new progression fantasy series, which I have not publicly revealed what it is about quite yet. So if you want to know about that, you can follow me on social media at Travis1Eat, and I will be revealing that fairly soon. So that's it for me.
Yeah, so for me, Mystic Reborn, the sequel to Paladin Unbound, is currently in with my publisher for first round of edits. So I'm not sure if that'll be out this year. I'm hoping it will. We'll see. So if you want to keep in touch and how that's progressing, you can follow me at Twitter at Jeff Speight, or check out my website, jeffreyspeight.com.
Yeah, so I mentioned this at the beginning, but the sequel to my debut novel. The Endless Song is out this fall, and it is the conclusion of at least this part of the story of these characters. And so we just released the US cover maybe a week ago or a week and a half ago, and we'll presumably be releasing the UK cover at some point. And I will probably tweet about that when it happens. And otherwise, I'm just thinking about the next book.
Okay, for me, I forgot to show it at the beginning, so I'll show it now. But here is Radio. So again, if you like kind of that 1920s noir vibe, this is a great book for that. It's got a lot of mythology, a lot of really dark themes. But that's out for paperback on Amazon and basically anywhere where you can order a book. And then it's also on Kindle Unlimited. And then as far as my podcast, the Indie Pub, you can find that anywhere. You can find podcasts as well as on YouTube. We've had some really great episodes. Crystal, who's in our comments right now, she was one of my guests recently. So just lots of good information and lots of good talk about lots of good drinks. I've got a few other projects in the works, but no timeline or deadlines just yet. So stay tuned.
All right. Yeah, that podcast sounds really interesting. And I've been wanting to say this the whole time. I love the guitars.
Oh, thanks.
Those look awesome. So yeah, I guess this is where we're going to close it, guys. And I want to thank David again and TBRCon for having me, and you guys for being such a great panel.
Thank you so much.
And thank
Thank you.
Yes.
that showed up to enjoy it.